What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Happy Monday. A lot going on. Had kind of a depressing show yesterday. Recruiting slowing down quite a bit. A little earlier than you wanted to. Hope to finish with a bang. I'm not sure it's going to finish the summer with a bang. We talked about that yesterday for 2 hours. Great episode. Talked to Daryl Streeter from Footballville. Pete, we really broke it down yesterday. So if you want to hear anything about recruiting, just check out some of the videos we posted yesterday. Today, we are shifting focus to the team. A lot of buzz. Who's working out well? Who's improving? Who's a name to keep an eye on, on this roster? Because right now, if recruiting's kind of done for the time being, it's football season, baby. So let's get ready for the season. I'll tell you who's getting ready for football season. A lot of football fans there. Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. All right, Pete, Farron saying it. Hop in.
Good morning, D.
What's going on? Sorry I was late. Had some stuff to do. Nothing. Yeah, put out an article here.
I got a good chuckle this morning. I got a very good chuckle this morning. Very savvy move by UD. Nothing like a little 01 recruiting class analysis to stop the bleeding.
It's funny. People are saying that. The truth is, so we'll talk about this at the end of the show because I want to go through it in depth. But I did a big article. And I'm doing a series of articles, which is basically going back and looking at the old recruiting classes, starting in 2001, which is the good one, and then progressing even further as it kind of goes downhill, just to understand sort of how, we know we've been bad for 2 decades plus, and now we're hopefully starting to dig out of it. So kind of understand what happened, what went wrong, where can we get better, where maybe are we getting better, just really putting some numbers and some analysis to what happened. Now that we have time to reflect, these guys got out to the NFL or whatever they've done. It's interesting to look back, trip down memory lane. So really enjoyed doing that series. We started with the 2001 class, which was the best one of this last period. That's the first Coker class, transition class from Butch Davis. We'll talk about all that at the end of the show. But yeah, that was planned. It's July 14th. This was always planned to be before camp to kind of carry us over. So I've seen some people with the conspiracy theories. I got a text from my guy JP, and he said the same thing you did. But no, it was all planned, and we're on to football season.
All right, I'm back. I was muted there for a second. We had an Amazon delivery, and the dog was barking, so I'm good now.
My guy Kioki Fuentes says good morning from Denver. I'm heading out to Denver later this week. Actually, sorry, in a week. We'll be recording. You won't notice any difference other than maybe mountains in the background, but I'll be at Estes Park with my fam. So shout out Gioki, heading out to the Rocky Mountain State next week.
The world traveler himself.
Summer shambles in full effect. Let's see what's going on here. Rich, I've heard this, and I talked about this yesterday, but I just want to say, he's saying it's hard to flip the top kids when they have contracts. I asked around about this. The contracts are not all created equal. Just a lot of it depends on the state you're in. Florida is not as, let's say, draconian in terms of if you want to flip schools, like clawing back money and stuff like that. So some states are more, it's easier to claw back money if someone leaves, including states where we have commits, which means, they're harder. It's harder for them to decommit, which is good, including probably our best commit, right, in Missouri. So we'll see. But I don't think it's like, the staff thinks they can flip guys. We'll see. They got to do it. Maybe our own guys are going to flip. That's who knows how it goes. But I asked specifically about this, and I think it's going to be possible to flip a lot of players.
Lance Cruz says you should analyze Mario's 4 classes at Oregon. We did a lot of stuff last offseason, especially around draft time, D, regarding Mario's classes at Oregon and how many pros came out of that kind of run compared to what was happening at Miami. But maybe we can do something else there.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. Hassan saying, "Good morning, fellas. You guys have been giving us bad news. We still love you guys. Let's get good news to you today, right? Because I want to talk about the team.
Alleged good news.
Alleged good news. I mean, look, you're not going to hear too much bad news at this time, but here's what I'll say about these kind of workout reports. We all know they're not in pads; they're just running around, whatever. You're not going to hear necessarily a ton of bad news at this time. So just expect that and bake that into, hey, just because we're getting good news doesn't mean there's no bad news. Just we're probably not going to get that out of that building at this time. However, that doesn't mean that the good news coming out is all fluff. I think back to last year around this time. We heard all the stuff about Cam Ward. We knew Cam Ward was what he was, but that was certainly buzz that was coming out. But what I thought was interesting was like the Jordan Lyles,
the OJ
Frederics, right? Elijah Lofton. Those are the guys that really contributed and played important snaps as freshmen. So those were the guys you heard buzz about. There weren't a ton of guys where you were like consistently hearing buzz and then they disappeared. I mean, Pruitt, I guess, McConaughey, but those guys played as well. So really the guys that you heard buzz about in this time, no pads, running around, helmets and shorts, or not even, but just physically moving and going about their work every day. You heard a lot about those guys before. In this time period, they ended up playing, some of the transfers that ended up hitting. You heard about those as well. So I think that's something to keep in mind as you hear these reports, that it's not all fluff. Like, you can tell when someone's in the building every day working, running around, because, and you can tell what's going on when you're around someone that much. There's things that will get picked up that are meaningful. Arab saying Pete with the bougie water. What kind of water you got there?
Got the Mountain Valley spring water. Need that glass bottle.
I heard that's what like the presidents drink. Is that the one? Someone said that there's like a drink that only presidents drink and they all live a long time. It might be.
I mean, I don't know if it's that one, but just trying to reduce those microplastics.
Yeah, my wife saw me about all that stuff. Hold on, let me see. Where did I hear this? Yeah, Mountain Valley is what the presidents drink. So then I heard
Ouachita Mountains, from the Ouachita Mountains.
So that was the selling point. Albert McKinney saying, "Can the season start, please? Recruiting the last 2 years got all college football fans losing their mind." We're here for you, Albert. We're going to talk about players that are on the football team that you're going to see play football in orange and green this season. So, just to get it started, Pete, we can go kind of position by position to an extent, but I wanted to really start with the group that is getting the most buzz in the offseason. And quite frankly, it's a group that you can monitor in the offseason, because a lot of what they do from a work standpoint, from a talent, just movement standpoint, you don't necessarily need pads to get a big part of the picture. Now, you're not going to get the whole picture without safeties coming and crushing you and cornerbacks really, really getting in there. But the wide receiver group, I have heard consistently, and we'll get to what you're hearing as well, is generating a ton of buzz. I heard CJ Daniels, both from a leadership standpoint, from a health standpoint, coming off the foot surgery, looks really good. They think he's going to do more than what Horton did last year for us, on top of the leadership component. I'm hearing Malachi Toney. We talked about him a lot, but I want to emphasize, sometimes they'll say this guy's going to be a freshman contributor. This guy will get snaps as a freshman. What I hear on Malachi Toney is more along the lines of this guy will be a freshman star. Now, that's a lot to put on a freshman. We've seen that happen before and it doesn't work out. I'm just trying to put in perspective. We always hear good reports on certain freshmen. With Malachi, it's much more, hey, this guy can be a star freshman. And look, last year, you had a freshman All-America in OJ Frederic. In terms of guys you signed out of high school, Zechariah Poyser was a freshman All-America coming in as a transfer this year. But Frederic was a freshman All-America for Miami. I would consider him a freshman star. 2 years ago, you had Ruben Bain and Francis Mauanoa, freshman All-Americans. I consider them stars as freshmen. The buzz that you're hearing on Malachi Toney is much more of that star type buzz based on, again, what they're saying to me. I saw it in spring. Certainly looked like a star there. Hold on. Thank you. Shout out to my mother-in-law, Lasara.
Wow,
bringing
look at
me
this.
some
You're getting coffee.
That's how we're doing out here.
Look at that service, man. Unbelievable. You got it good over there.
Yeah, shout out to Lasada. But in terms of Tony, he looked great in spring. He looked like a star. That was a real thing, and that buzz continues to build. We talked about JoJo Trader. Expectation is he's going to be one of the key guys in this team. He's got to get it done. We all know that stuff. Josh Moore, Dalen Upshaw, they think they hit on those guys. And there's more than that, but those are some names. Keelan Marion, I heard from a source, different kind of player, because this is much more of like a gadget, return man, hand the ball off to him kind of guy. But I heard Keelan Marion, they think he'll make a bigger impact as a player than Jacoby George. I thought that comparison was unusual because I don't look at them as similar types of players, and I don't think they do either. But that was the phrase that was used, is they think impact-wise, at least the people I talked to, he could have that more than that contribution in with all phases.
I think that the offense kind of lacks a player like that, quite frankly. I don't know that look, you could have said you had that in Brashard Smith a couple of years ago, different styles. I think Brashard has a little bit more, power element to his game, is more of like a running back, obviously, but you didn't have a gadget player on this offense last year, or at least someone that has shown it yet. Elijah Lofton, could he be something like that? Yes. But again, to me, it's a different, you're looking at a different type of player there and how they'll be utilized.
Pete, a lot of comments on your backpack here.
It's a weighted vest. It's not a backpack.
Oh, so you're getting some work in while you're doing this here.
Yeah, posture wise, I think it'll help me core strength. Even though I'm sitting down right now, I did a nice 30-minute walk this morning with it on. I just said, let me just keep it going. Like I said, man, until I feel like we're going where we need to go in the trenches, I need to train a different way to be ready for when my number's called.
Look at that, man. The work never stops. You're working twice right now. You're working on, you're working as a professional broadcaster while also working on the body and just the general movement and core strength.
That's a very broad term when you say professional broadcaster.
You've been bringing the info, man, as far as this team, a lot of team.
I'll have another edition of the work this week, D. But just kind of following up what you're saying about Malachi Tony, I think we've both agreed for a while that he would have a big impact. I think the question is really, like, is he the man game one? You know that there's a veteran in Tony Johnson. I think we expect Malachi to be the man by game 3 or 4, but right off the bat, Notre Dame, are we throwing him out there first snap on offense?
First snap, we'll see. I think he's going to play a lot in that game if he's healthy. I don't see why he wouldn't. Obviously, he's young. Jeremiah Smith, totally different athlete, totally different player, but he was the best player on a championship team. We're not saying Malachi Tony's going to be the best player on a championship team, but can he be a good player on a playoff team? I don't think that's out of the realm, and certainly not out of the realm of what's being expected of him based on what he's done. That's how he's preparing. I don't think the playbook's going to be an issue. I don't think the bright lights, any freshman is going to have a little bit of an adjustment, but this is not someone who's coming from Montana. They've been calling him Baby Jesus since high school. I think he's used to expectations. So we'll see what happens there.
I think this is A-Rob says nope in terms of he's not going to start. Mario's old school and he's about seniority. I mean, listen, the Swamp last year, OJ Frederic was starting as a cornerback on an island, probably outside of quarterback and tackle, as we saw with Zion Nelson in his first game years ago against Florida. There's not many tougher positions to get your first action in. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you've had freshman All-Americas every year. So you would say that somebody potentially could be the freshman All-America this year. So who is it going to be? You had Bain and Maunoa. You had Frederic. Now, who's it going to be this year? And I think Malachi Tony is the name Now that's a tough position. There's a lot of competition at wide receiver. You talk about freshman All-Americas. I'm not saying he's going to be a freshman All-America. That's a tough group to compete against typically. Plus, we have other guys on this team that are going to be getting some catches. So I just don't know statistically. But as far as like that kind of star where you know the name as a freshman, I think Malachi Toney is the one getting the most attention. Trying to think of freshmen. I'm shifting gears.
Josh Moore gets buzz, but I don't know that they're counting on him to be like an every down consistent player this year. I think he's more of a situational guy. And the word that's been used to me, I put it in the work last week, was he's a flash guy right now. And the flashes are beautiful. I mean, we've seen him go over the top of guys in practice and just moss people using one hand, to make some of these grabs, and the way he elevates and the way he uses his physicality. Because we talk about it's one thing to have the size, but knowing how to use that body and have the body control, which are all traits that I think Moore has, but it's got to be consistent. And I think he's another one that you get to the middle part of the season, the cream rises to the top. The best players are going to play. You need to see him do it, down in, down out in the first few games, when he gets those opportunities. Because look, we talk about JoJo Trader last year, and yes, he was banged up, and yes, he needed that season to kind of get his body right. But even when he did have opportunities there, it wasn't perfect, right? He had a big drop against Cal, for example. So like when you get your opportunities as a young guy, you need to take advantage of them. And I think Moore is someone that kind of eases his way into it by the middle to latter part of the season. He's a big part of at least when he's on the field, he's going to scare the defense, I think, in a different way than what you have with some of these other players at that position.
Yeah, no question about it. Dalen Upshaw, another one. You look at Alan Hearns. I'd say that's always been my comp for him. I think the trajectory, Hearns was a special teams player as a freshman, a good one, like kickoff, like coverage units and stuff like that. And then eventually got more and more playing time until he was the go-to guy. Dalen Upshaw I could see on a similar trajectory where he plays this year, but maybe not a ton at wide receiver, but he's capable if he needs to. The other freshman that I hear a lot of buzz about as far as instant impact, I just kind of go through the list. Hayden Lowe for sure, 5-star, big body. Like there's gonna be a lot of names there. I'm not sure he's gonna be like Ruben Bain, where he just kind of takes over, because Ruben Bain's still on the team. Plus you got Rondo Blunt, some other guys, Messidor. So I don't know if Lowe will have that kind of just dominant impact, but I think he will play well. Let me tell you a name, by the way, and his dad I know watches the show, so I want to bring him up. Kellen Wiley Jr. So Kellen Wiley Sr., I see you commenting all the time. Let me know if you're listening in the comments. I'm hearing some really, really good stuff about Kellen Wiley Jr. He's just total freak of nature. And I asked, I go, is he going to be able to play this year? Just with the adjustment and everything else from high school to college. And he goes, we can't keep this guy off. It's going to be hard. It's just going to be hard to keep him off the field because of the physical traits, the aggressiveness, the length. He's a Heatherman kind of guy. Heatherman loves length. He loves traits. He loves guys that can rush the passer. And then he thinks he can coach them up in the system. So that is a guy that I think Heatherman is a perfect fit with going forward. And this year, I don't know if he's going to be like a Sean Spence, right? Or one of these guys, Denzel Perryman, that they're like just natural, instinctive, pure linebackers that you throw them out there and they're making tackles right away. I think he's much more of a high upside, develop slower guy, but he's so athletic and talented. I think at least in the special teams part of the game, you're going to see Kellen Wiley get some burn and make an impact.
And what I've heard, just talking to, I was talking to one of the linebackers a couple months ago, and what they told me was just how much easier the defense was from their perspective. Like there wasn't as much on them from a yes, instincts at that position are always going to be important, but they're kind of being told what to do on each play, right? So there's not as much thinking in the equation, so to speak. And I think that someone like Wiley, they can kind of pigeonhole him into doing one or two different things, right? You get after the quarterback, or you're matching up with a body type that because we know he can get sideline to sideline, and I think that's what he's going to bring to the table. He doesn't have to be perfect in terms of the knowledge of what's going on down there because he has those traits, right? And he can kind of make up maybe being a step slow on recognition early on with that sideline to sideline speed that he has and the length.
And look, he'll develop, right? He's a late blooming guy. What he is now is not what he's going to be. So that will continue to grow. One more name I want to mention from the freshman class, Pete, and while you kind of go to your notes and think about some other guys that have jumped out to you, I know you've been talking to people. Brock Schott, as far as the freshman class. Luka Gilbert, I think, could help early, particularly special teams. Just he's got the size, fluid athlete, coordinated, good hands, knows how to block. But Brock Schott's a name that I've heard is just a total weight room monster. The guy lives in the weight room. He lives to work out. That's pretty much what he's about. He's got tremendous speed. I saw him in spring. This guy's got legit Miami caliber speed. He's probably the fastest tight end we signed since. We had Arroyo. Arroyo is pretty fast, but he's in that category of speed, not as tall and just big as Arroyo, but speed wise, that kind of speed, maybe even a little faster in a smaller body, and willing to block, aggressive. So Brock Schott's a name I've heard that will get involved. Alex Bauman's starting to make more of an impact. We didn't see him that much in spring because he was hurt and he just gotten here from Tulane in the portal. But now people are getting more familiar with Alex Bauman. They like what he's doing there with him. So keep an eye on Alex Bauman. But freshman-wise, Brock Schott. You looked at Elijah Lofton last year playing a big role, had a lot of snaps on this team. Didn't have a huge amount of targets or carries, but in terms of the snaps that he played, he was in there on a lot of big plays. So I think Brock Schott could be somebody that you see with the first team getting snaps similar to Elijah Lofton. Maybe not as advanced, but one thing I would say over Elijah Lofton, who, as you know, I think he's the best player on the team, I say Schott is even faster than Lofton. Schott is really, really, really fast.
I wanted to mention someone, D, that we've talked about a good amount. I saw him in the comments here, and I think he could be someone who's pushing. He's in that mix probably for that 4th, 5th D tackle spot. Dante Simpson from Chaminade, right? I'm going to pull up a picture real quick. I was just looking for kind of an updated picture on him. There's one here from March, but look at this picture of him from February of last year. All right. Picture of him in the weight room, and you see young, looks young in the face there. You could see he's got some size on him, but with room to grow. And then this is just a year later. So this is what he looked like this spring. And he's someone that, talking to, being out at these practices and then talking to some people who were seeing parts of the field that I wasn't able to get to on the media side. Talking to someone who played at Miami and coached at Miami, said out of all the freshman defensive linemen, he was the one. Him and Lowe were the ones that stood out, and that he looks like a vet, has the power at the point of attack that generally you don't find with an early enrollee at that position. And I think, look, there was a question about Artavius Jones. This was a big spring for him. I think he helped himself. He needed to really show some progress after last season. I think just at maturity and doing the right things outside of just being a beast in the weight room, right? So I think that's going to be an interesting battle with Artavius Jones and Dante Simpson. But that picture, that's a pretty crazy transformation. I'll pull it up again. This was February 24, 2024, yep. And then March 4th, 2025. It's pretty crazy.
That's big, man. And by the way, I think you're bringing this up, Pete, because one thing I didn't mention in the front, I'm hearing great things about the new strength and conditioning team. We have a new strength and conditioning lead, but it's really just, as a group, right? I'm hearing that the progress in the weight room with this new team, some of them have been around, but it's obviously with the stash moving on. It's a new leadership, new group. I'm hearing that they are making major strides in the weight room. You hear that all the time. It's the off season. I get it. But it was pointed out to me directly and pretty emphatically. And you saw it with Dante Simpson there, the picture, Pete, you were showing. One more thing on Dante Simpson. I thought he was going to be like a John Ford type, but John Ford got drafted. That's a guy that you win with. If John Ford would have, he was kind of early for the portal era, right? He's the kind of guy that like jumps in the portal and you're like, why is this guy getting so much attention? And then he's getting huge money. But John Ford, I thought, was what a comp for Dante Simpson coming out. Now having seen Dante Simpson in person in spring, I was at every practice pretty much. His quickness, his athleticism for his size, much better than what I expected it to be. Given what really in high school, you could tell that he had talent, but he hadn't turned it all on yet. It was kind of a flash player, would have injuries here and there. Now seeing him in spring, the twitch and the athleticism is more than I expected. And you just pointed out the size is there.
I wanted to bring this question up. I know we're jumping around a bit, but we've had this similar question a few times asking about Ray Joseph. Heart of Sports says, is Ray not going to be a dude? All the talk is Malachi and Tony, but Ray can play. Can he not? You and I are both big fans of Ray D in terms of the work ethic, what he brings to the team. Mario had him as a lead recruiter on some of these receivers that have been down here too. He's had them sitting at dinner on their visits, right? With these guys. Hasn't gone well, but that's not on Ray. But that just shows you what
great guy.
Right. But my point for saying that is Mario wants this guy on the team. He was not pushed out of the door. He stuck around too, which I think we need to give Ray a ton of credit for doing that. And 100% he is in the mix. I think he had a good spring. To me, it looked like he leaned up a little bit. I mentioned that a couple times. I think he showed a little bit more of the quicks. We've said it time and time again, was not a pure receiver coming out of high school. And I think that's been a bigger adjustment or learning curve, especially in an offense where there's a lot put on the slot under Shannon Dawson. But we're both hopeful for him. I don't think we're going to sit here and say he's going to have 1,000-yard season, but I have said a few times this offseason, I have not given up on Ray in the grand scheme of things here. I'm excited for him to go out there and he's kind of for different reasons, but a Chance Robinson, for example, who's been banged up. Like, I'm not giving up on those guys. It's just, you got to see it before you say we're counting on this guy to be a really reliable part of our rotation.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. He had a good spring, probably the best spring I've seen him have. You have competition there with Tony Johnson, obviously with Malachi Tony. Let's see what happens. I think everybody wants him to be part of the team. He's part of the team, a bigger part of the team because the character is so strong and he has athletic traits. He's explosive. So we'll see, man. I hope they find a role for him because he's a great example what you want a Cane to be. And he had a good spring. He made plays. So we'll see. Slot's the most important position of the receivers, at least in this Dawson offense. So we will see what happens there, man. He's in the mix. He's there.
Kevin Dennis says people forget Ohio State and UF want a chance. Don't sleep on him. I don't think we're sleeping on him, but he just hasn't been healthy, man. So until he's out there on the practice field, I know we've seen some videos of him this offseason looking huge, looking like a tank. And we want him to be healthy because that physical nature at the position is much needed.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to get healthy. He's got to play.
But listen, you guys got to understand how it is. If we sit here and we start telling you every single player is primed for a breakout season, then we're called homers. So we can't just hype everyone up.
Well, I mean, I honestly cannot hype Chance up because I just haven't seen him play. So to me, to hype him up would just be a total lie because he just hasn't played when I've been around, and that's been most of the time. I can tell you, looking on the sideline, the guy looks the part. He looks like $1 million. He's big. I've heard no bad character stuff or anything like that with him. So it's just a matter of getting on the field and performing. But the guy with that kind of size, And I liked him in high school as far as being a physical guy. He blocks, he catches the ball. So you can use a guy like that. It's just going to be about playing, but it's a good problem to have if we're not talking about enough people. Storm Warning said, "What's up, fellas? So glad we're talking about football. I'm sick of talking about recruiting. There's going to be a great year for the Canes. Everybody's going to want to come to Miami after this." That's the hope, man. That's the hope, is that the team does what it's supposed to do. And from there, the recruiting takes care of itself. Before we keep going here, well, let's see. Before we get to the spots, I want to finish this team discussion. Just names I've heard.
I have a name who's not a freshman, Dylan Day. Dylan Day. Someone told me the other day that someone who D, who's a very good source on this sort of stuff, says Dylan Day is up at 200 pounds, looks great physically, and then just we talk about the character side and how guys approach off seasons, handle themselves in the building outside of just the weight room and things of that nature. And Dylan Day is someone that I believe is going to push for a lot of playing time this year.
Yeah, the Truth Live saying that's his sleeper as well. Fresh is saying 210. That'd be shocker to me. 210's huge.
I can get his current weight. I don't know. 210 would be very surprising to me.
The name I keep just observing him and kind of physically looking at him run around and knowing what this player looked like at the same age. The comp I always use for Dylan Day, Sheldrick Redwine. Just a guy who is a corner. Is he a safety? Is he a nickel? Ended up being a safety and a really good one. He was 6 foot 196, so Dylan Day might be a little bigger than him. Redwine really improved his speed. He was running like 4.8 in high school as far as the electric times or the laser times. Ended up running a 4.44 at the combine, 39-inch vert, 4.1 shuttle. So Redwine really worked his way to kind of maximize his athleticism, worked in the weight room, got more assertive, more decisive at safety once he got used to the position. It was really, really good for us, 4th-round pick. So I could see a similar trajectory to Dylan Day. He was a fast guy in high school, ran the 200. I want to say he ran in the 21, something like that, but pretty fast in the 200 meters. That was his specialty, and has the length, has played corner, has played returner, has played a little bit of offense, I believe, in high school, did a little bit of everything. Now, year two at safety. He was the best special teams player we had last year. A lot to like with Dylan Day. Name I want to bring up here, Armando Blunt, just because there's a lot of questions about that 4th defensive tackle. I really think that when it's all said and done and you add up the snaps, I think Armando Blunt probably is that 4th defensive tackle from a snap standpoint. He's still going to be out at defensive end, but you have Hayden Lowe there. You have other guys that can help you at defensive end. So I think Armando Blunt will end up being that 4th defensive tackle. He's more physical than Mesidor, who did that for you last year. So just bigger than Mesidor, naturally bigger than Mesidor, I should say, just standing next to them. Blunt's just a naturally bigger, more powerful player than Mesidor. So we'll see how that goes, but I wanted to bring that up. Linebacker, name I got to talk about. The buzziest name of the transfers, aside from Carson Beck, who we talked about plenty, Motore. Just that this guy is something we have not had on the team from a leadership standpoint on defense. 2019 class. So he's the same class as Sam Brooks. This guy's been around, but the way he runs, the way he moves, the attitude that he has, I'm hearing a ton of impact type buzz. Like this guy's going to be an impact player with Motori. He's ready to go. He's running around. They said he runs like a deer already. He might take a week or two to get cleared in camp just because they want to see him with pads on running around, just kind of part of the process. But I don't think it's one of those situations where he's going to be like 50% running around in camp, limping his way to Notre Dame. I heard he's running really well. And I just keep hearing that he is what we have not had under Mario Cristobal. And we've had some good ones. I mean, Francis Mauanoa just got drafted. Wesley Basaint's rock solid. But I keep hearing
Francisco got drafted.
Oh, sorry. Francisco Mauanoa just got drafted. Kiko Mauanoa. But Motore, they're saying just from a personality as far as being that kind of extroverted leader, that real alpha type guy. Not that, Kiko Mauanoa is an alpha. I wouldn't want to mess with him, but quieter dude. This guy's just more of a take charge. He knows the defense. He played under Coach Heatherman. We needed exactly what he brings on paper, and hearing people around the building, he has been that at least since he's been down here.
Arab asking about Blunt if he's open to playing DT. That during the recruiting process he wanted to play DN. I see him as more of it playing DT in situational, like pass rushing situations. I don't know if he's a down in, down out D tackle, just with his frame.
Yeah, but I mean, I bet he's probably more powerful than a lot of guys in the ACC playing, as your third, fourth guy. I think that he can definitely do. Martin Dubé saying Touré is pronounced, and he says Touré, not Torre, which I've been saying. Found in 3 or 4 West African countries. Appreciate you as always, Martin. Couple comments here on a player that I want to get to, which is Bobby Pruitt. So Bobby Pruitt, we get a lot of questions about him, and I asked about him specifically, and the buzz on him is extremely strong at the linebacker position, not safety. People ask he's going to play safety, linebacker. He did a great interview with Category 6. Shout out to Coach Jay. Shout out to 50. Shout out to everybody over there with Category 6. But Bobby Pruitt, heard a lot of buzz last year, ended up playing. I mean, he was out there. He forced a fumble against Syracuse. He played as a freshman on the defense. I am hearing he looks absolutely outstanding just from a talent standpoint, what he can do running, what he can do hitting. Like you talk about NFL and things like that. The name you hear is a Bobby Pruitt and Kellen Wiley, who we talked about a little earlier. But Bobby Pruitt it was brought up to me specifically when I was asking around this last round. He is a name that's got a lot of buzz behind him. Is he going to be, the first down, second down linebacker consistently? I don't know, maybe. But certainly on third down, a guy like Bobby Pruitt is someone you want on the field because he can cover. He's got great instincts. He can strike. And he just always finds, even as a freshman, when he was learning his way, the defense was struggling, he found his way around the ball.
Pedro Roman asking, do we have a fullback? I believe that would be Elijah Lofton.
Yeah, I think we got 2, right? In my view, that there's 2 guys that need to be playing fullback for us. And I believe we should use the fullback more. You look at the NFL, you're seeing the fullback kind of return in vogue. The 49ers, the Chiefs, the Miami Dolphins, the Baltimore Ravens, the kind of offenses that people want to be like, those teams use fullbacks. It's not like an old school, hey, you're an old school caveman coach for using a fullback. Newer teams use fullbacks. So Pedro, it's a great question. To me, like Pete said, Elijah Lofton, you saw him play fullback last year. I think ultimately when Elijah Lofton gets to the NFL, he's going to be a fullback / running back / H-back, like just a movable piece that lines up at fullback when necessary. He's a weight room beast. He's one of the strongest guys we got in the weight room. He's physical. You saw him play fullback last year and had some very, very powerful lead blocks. He's not afraid of collisions. So he's perfect there. Plus, with him at fullback, you can hand him the ball. He scored a touchdown at fullback last year running it. You can line him up, and he's going to be better than any linebacker by far when it comes to a pass situation. He can stay back and block, protect Carson Beck. He can do a lot of different things. So I think him, but then everything I said about him, I think Mark Fletcher can do, aside from the receiving part, which Lofton is unique in terms of just going out, running routes and doing all that. I think Fletcher can do a lot of those same things. He's still going to be a tailback. I'm not saying he's going to be the fullback, but kind of how Najee Davenport was, maybe with more tailback, because Najee was mostly a fullback because we had so many tailbacks. I think Fletcher would play more running back than Najee did at UM. Najee ended up playing tailback in the pros and doing well, having 100-yard games. But I could see Fletcher kind of that style where he's a running back, he's a tailback. You're gonna hand him the ball and make him part of your running game, running. But if you need him to lead block, he's got such size and power that he can collide. AJ saying, don't start that. He's a running back, see the hole and hit it. Fullback, people think I'm saying that as like a criticism. I'm saying this is another thing he can do. We know he can be the tailback. But to be able to play the fullback as well, or split back, which you saw a little bit last year, and then be the lead blocker and crush people, that just adds to his overall value. Because now he's a more complete football player. Now you're causing much more problems for the defense because if Fletcher's on the field, is he running it? Is he the lead blocker for a Lyle? if you have him and Lofton, they can both lead block for each other. They're that powerful. Plus in the backfield, he does all those things from a blocking standpoint, protecting the passer. So I would put Fletcher and Lofton in that category. And that's not to say, oh, you're downgrading them by putting them fullback. I think those two guys, the ability they have at fullback, and now you have Lyle who can run. You have Marty Brown who can run. Both Fletcher and Lofton can play the tailback role as well. Now you get your best players on the field, and you open up so many options because not everybody has the power to lead block and collide with these linebackers. Not everybody has the willingness to do that. Fletcher and Lofton have that ability, plus all the other stuff they do.
Here's a quick question from Pedro Armand.
Yeah, he said, why are people so down on Fletcher and higher on his backup? When it was games, he would get more carries than Martinez last year. I am the biggest Mark Fletcher fan on the planet, so you're not going to hear that from me. I think Fletcher's a complete stud. I think he's one of the best football players on the team. I think he's one of the best football players in the ACC. And I think with running, people, he doesn't have the most dramatic running style where he's super patient, waiting for the big play and juking guys out. He's hitting it, and he's hitting it effectively, and he has speed, and he's got incredible size. When you see him in person, the guy's huge. I just think where he's at his best.
I think he has relative speed. I don't know. I think that's why maybe people are a bit down on him because he hasn't shown the ability to break a 50, 60 yarder to this point. I think that's why perception wise, I love him because like you said, he hits the hole. He takes 2 steps and he gets 5 yards because he's a long strider. So I think visually it's not as like, it doesn't wow you the same way as other backs maybe. But it's effective.
Hear you. I think his speed is better than people think. I think maybe it's his cuts that would be weaker. But he has had some.
I think this is the issue with him, D, and this is what I think is maybe more the concern with him is that he's had the fumbling more. That's probably more the concern than anything else, as A-Rob points out.
For sure, and he fumbled in the spring game, so he's got to work on that. Look, the competition's there, man. So, and that's another reason why I think you set him up at fullback because if you don't want. I would never want Mark Fletcher not on the field. He's just too physical. He's too mentally good and strong. That if he's fumbling, I'm like, all right, Mark, you're fumbling. Now you're blocking for Jordan Lyle or Marty Brown or Lofton, right? So I think it's important to train him there and Lofton, not because they're bad, but because they're 2 of your best football players. I would say in terms of, if you were asking me who are the best pure football players on the team. So now I'm talking about just, you could put them in any position and they're going to be good. I would say maybe the 2 best pure football players on the team. I'm not saying the most impactful at their position or whatever, but the most pure football players on the team, Pete. Lofton and Fletcher, in terms of everything you ask them to do, they're going to be able to do that. When you talk about, you put them at linebacker, they'd be our best linebackers. I think either one of those guys would be first-round type linebackers. I truly believe that. I said it's about Fletcher since high school. I think they can block. I think they can certainly run the ball. They can both catch. Lofton probably more on the catching side than Fletcher, but just great guys, great attitude, weight room beast, powerful, talented dudes. We need more of those kind of guys to win championships. So, big fan of both. Sorry to cut you off, Peaks. I know you had something you were talking, but I just, the Fletcher comments, I want to make sure we address those in the chat before moving on to anyone else you're hearing some buzz about before.
Well, I forgot what I was going to say before, but I did want to get to this comment from Gio Kane that I think we've talked about this sort of point before. He says, Pete, why were the receivers not used last year? Luke mentioned it and was mad at it, but he was kind of right. We should have been using them for more experience. I'm not saying I wouldn't have liked to see it. I would also kind of pose the question back to you in 2 ways. One, who would you have liked to see more of? Because we've talked about JoJo wasn't ready from a physical standpoint. He was hurt last year. He was banged up. So if he was healthy and he was physically ready to do it every week, of course, I would have loved to see him get more time out there. Ray, he had opportunities and didn't seize them. So who did we want to see more of last year, and where would it have happened? Because there weren't many games where Miami was blowing teams out after the first few games of the year. It was a lot of tight games. There were some comeback games, and there were just games where you weren't going to trust a young receiver out there as much as you were one of these older guys. Yes, did a Jacoby George make boneheaded plays? Of course he did. Did a Sam Brown let you down at times last year? Yes, but I don't know who else they were going to trust in those spots, D. I don't know if they had the depth for it.
I agree. And I would say, and I don't say this as a criticism, but we had Cam Ward. And I don't think, Cam Ward
He was tough on some of these young guys, man. I don't know that it was an easy adjustment. And I say tough, not like he did anything wrong, but for a young receiver to pick things up, like, I don't know if Cam had patience for that last year.
No. And Tom Brady's tough on young receivers. I mean, not like in a way that he's destructive to the team. Cam Ward is, to me, is the ultimate team guy and good guy. And like I've said before, his intangibles, I've never seen anybody with an A in every intangible at quarterback for Miami, on top of what he does on the field, until Cam Ward. But he's an alpha. He's a star of the team. They're the number one offense in the country. It's very similar to Tom Brady when Tom Brady's rolling. If you throw a rookie out there with Tom Brady, well, it could be tough. He's going to tell him, hey, this is what we expect. And if he's not doing it, get him off the field. I'll come back to him next year. Right. So I think that's a little bit of what you saw, which is when you have a quarterback in an offense that is so ready to rock and roll and is so top of the game, it's hard to just jump in there and go through growing pains, because we scored every single drive. I mean, every single drive we scored a touchdown. So, like,
what drop? Every single drive, but
it felt like it. I mean, dude, people don't understand. At least some people do. But I honestly did not understand until I really just dove into the stats how much better this offense was than every other team in the country. We scored 43 points a game against Division I opponents. 43 points a game. Number two was 38. So we were 5 points better. It's almost a touchdown better than the second place team. We were a full touchdown better than Notre Dame, which was number 5 offense. And we were a full touchdown better than the number 5 offense, which played in the championship game. So, I mean, it is incredible what we did on offense last year. And that's a hard situation to walk into as a freshman. Now, we'll say Malachi Toney, someone like that, that's the kind of guy that can get in there earlier, because I just think mentally he is somebody that is absolutely elite. Preparation, instincts, IQ, you name it. So I think no matter how this offense is doing this year, even though he's a young player, I think he's the kind of young player that's uniquely suited to play early. JoJo, more of a traditional young player. He's going to flash. He had athleticism. You need to get stronger. Now is go time for JoJo Trader. And I think he's going to be able to do it if he stays healthy.
Go ahead, D.
No, well, I mean, do you have anybody else you want to talk about here on the team that you're hearing stuff about?
No, not really. Let me see. Let me pull up my notes. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, you know who I heard Ryan Rodriguez is looking really good right now, too. I know he got hurt last year. He's someone who's dealt with injuries, but I kind of look at him similarly to Markel Bell last year, where we're kind of saying, where they're saying he's going to play, and then we're looking at it like, okay, where is he going to play? Because you have a really good 5 that you think are going to be one of the best groups in the country, and then the season happens, and maybe there's an injury or something happens where we find Ryan Rodriguez playing a big role, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, he's one of our best 5 or 6 offensive linemen. He's playing an important role. I think you could see something like that happen with him this year, and then potentially being your starting center next year.
100%. I agree. He's the first man off the bench, I think, if there's an injury in the interior. One last guy I want to talk about, Keontae Scott, the nickel cornerback from Auburn. He was going to transfer to Houston to follow Zach Etheridge, who had left Auburn the year before to go to Houston. Ends up coming back to Miami when Etheridge comes to Miami. For those who don't remember, this was later in the portal process. Keontae Scott was one of the best defensive players really in the SEC, playing the nickel role for Auburn. He was projected as a top 100 type pick. I mean, you name it, he was getting that kind of buzz when he played nickel at Auburn under Coach Etheridge, who's now Miami's cornerbacks coach. He also was the best punt returner in the SEC. 10.9 speed, let's say 4.4 speed. If you're trying to just project it to the 40, plenty of size. NFL guy. Has a chance to go pro, comes back to Auburn, gets a lot of NIL money, playing outside corner, struggles big time. Loses his confidence, getting beat a lot. Etheridge had already left to go to Houston to be the defensive coordinator or the defensive backs coach with a raise. Now Etheridge is back in Miami or at Miami. Scott's at Miami. Scott is back to playing his traditional role in the nickel. He looks outstanding, very comfortable, very motivated. The intangible stuff everybody feels great about because, again, it was never a problem with his character. It was he lost confidence. Now he's back with his old coach. He's back at his position where he excelled. Fresh start. None of the fans saw him get beat last year, so there's none of that kind of baggage that you carry sometimes when you have some struggles. So he is somebody that I could see emerging as like an NFL type player. We don't talk about in the secondary, but if he's an NFL type player at nickel, that's going to help your whole group. So keep an eye on Keontae Scott at the nickel.